Diodwit agus falcha. Hello and welcome to South Church on this Sunday morning in April, where I find myself in the small village of Corofin, County Clare, on the west coast of Ireland. Soon I will go for a walk where I will find flowers in profusion everywhere and trees in full leaf, where I will find a natural seasonal progression that began in mid-February when the first daffodils burst their paper skin. The lambs of Imbolc, February 1st or thereabouts, grow seemingly by the hour and as they frolic next to Mama. The famous patchwork green of Ireland, a very real phenomenon, I assure you, is ever present. No New England shades of seasonal browns and grays for me this past winter. The ubiquitous stone walls were hidden behind a riot of ivy, moss, fern, and lichen. And those fields, those glorious fields of Irish grass and pasture land, remained richly fulsome. There is reason for this. All of nature, and certainly all of humankind, pay homage very nearly fealty to the weather in these parts. It is not only possible, but expected to speak in nearly human terms about its daily whims. Moody, surprising, grumpy, glorious, mercurial. It is all of that and more. In Maine, where I'm from, there is a saying, if you don't like the weather, wait a minute. This part of Western Ireland raises that to an art form. You need not wait a minute. A second or two will do. You begin with soft rain, which begets fleeting rainbow, begetting a clean ash gray sky, begetting glimpses of blue, begetting full sunshine, begetting rain again. And this before you even have time to catch your breath. One often feels at the whim of some ancient goddess or fairy here in County Clare, the weather being the most prominent, but hardly the only manifestation of its presence. These are the contours of my life now, and I declare myself pleased. After decades of living and working on the seacoast, after raising a strong and resilient daughter and launching her into the world, I hitched myself upon a dream and moved to Ireland last June. I came here for many reasons. As a child of Irish ancestors, as a pagan looking for a home and a childhood Catholic looking to make sense, as someone who wants to take Celtic music into her very pores, and as a would-be vagabond looking to unlock her latent wanderlust. Unfortunately, COVID-19 has done a pretty good job of hampering some of those dreams. Pubs are closed and live music is on hold. Travel has been curtailed. I would lie if I said I did not engage in some wringing of cosmic hands that hold a pandemic and a field of frolicking sheep simultaneously in their palms. Thank goodness for the frolicking sheep. Other dreams have started to come true, promising only deeper and more profound revelations to come. Last summer, I traveled to my ancestral parish of Eskra in Northern Ireland, where hailed generations of McDermotts. I learned that mine is a legacy tied to the land, that all important Irish land that has been the lifeblood of this country for thousands and thousands of years. Land does not only mean land for farming, although it means just that. I recently read a book called 32 Words for Field, written by an Irish author who takes justifiable pride in knowing the intricacies and lost legacies of the Irish language. He tells us there are distinctly separate words for a field of corngrass, a field of cattle at night, a field for games or dancing, a field with fairy dwellings on it, and on, specific words tied to the field. That's how important it is to the Irish. Mine is a legacy, too, tied to religion and religious persecution, and how small indignities can just punish a person. If you know the history of Ireland at all, you know that it is one of disenfranchisement. Northern Ireland in particular has retained its own peculiar brand of this, with its ascendant Protestants and descendant Catholicism. In this world of my ancestors, Catholic farmers were allotted only the upland acreage, rocky, less grassy, less hospitable than the rolling lowland fields and richer soils of the Protestants. Poverty was often endemic. It is no surprise then that discrimination and poor crops, no doubt fueled by the aftermath of the Great Hunger, were the likely causes that caused my great-grandfather to leave his native soil for America. It is instructive for me, a white American with all the privileges accorded to me, to remember that my Catholic forebears were not treated with dignity and worth. I descend from a minority clan, at least in that very specific geographic region of the world. And it is particularly important these times of all times to consider that. I think it would not take much for any of us to find burrowed roots of intolerance toward or propagated by our ancestors not that many generations ago. Yet the religious minority of the North remains very much the religious majority in the Republic of Ireland. This country, for good and often ill, hitched itself to Catholicism a very long time ago when the man Patrick settled here around 500 CE. Yet, as I have discovered little by little, and much to my very deep delight, the echoes of Ireland's past reverberate everywhere here. It is awesome to live in a country with a 5,000-year history, a place where ancient rituals are still a part of the fiber of everyday life, where good Catholics fervently believe it is best not to disturb a group of stones set in a circular pattern called a ring fort for fear of calling on the wrath of the Sidhe, the fairies who live there. In short, everywhere in Ireland, magic is afoot. And folks find nothing untoward in holding the belief in God and a belief in the Sidhe simultaneously, which is, I got to tell you, wicked cool. At its most elemental, this is syncretism, the blending of two spiritual beliefs into one seamless whole. That early polytheistic system comes down through the ages and is not lost to the mist of time, in large part due to the early Christian settling of Ireland, beginning with Patrick. His followers and their followers through the generations include literate, European-trained monks who dispersed throughout the country. 11th, 12th, 13th century monasteries are not quite as common as cattle around here, but nearly so. These monks wrote or transcribed sacred Catholic texts, absolutely, but they also were the Matthews and Lukes of a pagan land, committing to writing the oral traditions of the Irish people of the region. And so today exist virtually hundreds of texts that chronicle the religious and secular origins of this country, the gods, the goddesses, the battles, the invasions, the traditions, the alliances, the loves, the myths. It's really quite remarkable, the breadth of what has come down through time to us today. Yet because the chroniclers were Catholic clergy, it is widely understood that the text had a peculiarly Christian moral and biblical twist, not part of the original oral storytelling. Where one begins and the other leaves off is truly lost to the mists of time. And so syncretism began all that time ago, leaving today a blended spirituality. To me, nowhere is this concept more clearly manifested than in the holy wells that are scattered throughout the breadth and depth of Ireland, some 3,000 in all. They are as common as monasteries here in County Clare, or so I've been told. And I have personally visited about a dozen so far. I am very much a beginning student of Irish syncretism and have barely a thimbleful of knowledge that so many spend a lifetime acquiring. With that as a caveat, it is clear that wells were held sacred by the ancient Irish. In Irish literature and myth, wells and springs were seen as flowing from and conduits to the other world, the place where resided the gods and goddesses. Unlike other polytheistic and monotheistic traditions that looked above for the home of the deity or deities, think Mount Olympus or heaven, the Irish texts indicate the Irish looked below. The well waters, and indeed all waters in Ireland, were considered uniquely feminine. The wells themselves were guarded by maidens who were often depicted as offering food and water from the well to those who came to this sacred place. As Catholicism took hold, these wells that I imagine people had already visited for time out of mind were gradually subsumed into a defined saintly hierarchy. And so the holy wells of Saint Bridget that the Catholic supplicants visit today, for instance, are likely the same wells that pagan believers visited to pay homage to the goddess Brigid. I am very lucky that my life brings me to this time and this place to appreciate Irish syncretism, although I am but a pilgrim at the beginning of the journey. I have long felt myself to be a spiritual person, and I'm an amalgam of the religious experiences that form who I am now in my early elder years. I spent half my life railing against the Catholic Church, as only a person not fully mature can rail against the religion of their youth. I still have intellectual, political, and moral issues with the Vatican, but I have come to a broader understanding. I see the deep faith of family members and others I know, and I accept, I hope with grace and respect, that their spiritual path nourishes them. I come to this understanding in no small part because I am a Unitarian, syncretic in its own unique way. On any given Sunday, when we can go back to church, as we all know, any one of us could be sitting next to a Christian on one hand, an atheist on the other side, and a Buddhist next to her, all finding spiritual sustenance in the service. As one of our ministers once told me, and it's become a mantra, many paths, one mountain. It's difficult to be a Unitarian and carry religious grudges. Most importantly, I have long found the divine in the spirit of the babbling brook, a rustling wind, a fine harvest, the moon. Ireland's ancient past feels exactly like home to me. I'm not sure this has been a very profound sermon, and for that, my apologies. It does have kind of a postcard from Ireland quality about it, for sure. But I have tried to give you a sense of my life across the pond. Hopefully, when I'm back in August, the church will be open and I can greet you in person, telling you about the great music I just heard at a pub or the recent trip I took to Europe. But for now, as they say in Ireland, slán go fóill. Goodbye for now. Until we meet again. May it be so, and blessed be.